We're going to talk about heat transfer today, so get out your doodle notes and get ready. First and foremost, you need to remember that heat always moves from the warm to the cool substances. So warm air or hot air is always trying to win and take over. In fact, nobody likes to be cold. Let's start by reviewing convection and how heat energy transfers using convection. Convection is when heat is circulated through fluids like air or water. A good example you're already familiar with is heat from our core, our inner core, creates convection currents in the mantle, which moves those plates on the Earth's crust. So remember, the tectonics are always, plates are always moving because of the convection currents in the mantle, and those convection currents work because the core is so hot. Some examples are when a burner heats air at the base of a balloon. As the warm air rises, it cools, and then it sinks. The air repeatedly gets warmer and colder, creating that circular motion, and that is called a convection current. It's what makes the hot air balloon go up, and then what makes the hot air balloon go down. So, thinking about convection, can you think of any more examples that might show or illustrate convection? How about during a fire? The hot smoke rises. This is why you would always crawl out of a burning building instead of walking out. Boiling water moves in convection currents. It gets hot at the bottom and it bubbles up to the top where it cools off a little bit and it falls back down. And then, of course, we're going to learn more later, the ocean water has its own convection currents that cause the oceans to move constantly when we have our surface currents and our deep ocean currents. When you see steam rising off hot food, what you're seeing is that hot air rising. When it gets high enough, it's going to start cooling off and you're not going to see it anymore. All right, hopefully everything is filled in for convection. If it is, you are ready to move on to conduction. Conduction is when heat moves through an object from direct contact. When we touch something, okay, that is direct contact, and that is called conduction. So think about some examples. Heat moves from the hot sand to your bare feet. When you're walking across the sand, you usually want to wear flip-flops because if you don't, your feet burn. They get really hot because the sun has used radiation to heat up the sand, and now your feet are touching that sand. Another example you might be familiar with is heat from a stove burner touches the pot. It transfers to the cool handle, warming it. Okay. Again, we're touching here. If there's touching or direct contact, then it's conduction. All right, so think about conduction. Any more examples you can think of? Remember, direct contact. Ice melting in your hand. Okay, you're transferring your heat energy from your hand to the ice and it's making it melt. You're touching it. When you're ironing clothes, if you burn your finger when you touch a hot light bulb or really anything hot, when you touch it, it's direct contact. A great example you might see at a restaurant or even at your house. The heat's moving from the hot griddle or a hot pan to the surface of the butter and it's causing the butter to melt. At this point, if you have convection all filled in and you have conduction all filled in, you're ready to move to radiation. Radiation is heat moving between objects that are not, never, ever, till the end of time, touching. These are electromagnetic waves or infrared rays that are moving through air. They are not ever touching. Example of radiation that you are most familiar with are the hot rays of the sun. The sun's heat radiates to the earth. It warms our air, our soil, our water, even us when we're standing out in the sun and you get warm. Another fun example is roasting marshmallows. Your heat from the fire radiates, it warms up the air, and it toasts the marshmallow without touching it. If you put your marshmallow in the flame, you are doing conduction, not radiation. When you hold it right above it, you're experiencing radiation. A real nice cozy example of radiation in the winter is the heat you feel while sitting close to a fire. That is radiation. You're not touching the fire. You're feeling the direct electromagnetic waves or infrared rays coming from the fire and reaching to your feet. So, can you think of some other examples of radiation? Well, how about a space heater, okay, or a radiator? You can feel the heat coming out of it without touching it. And how about microwaves? Yeah, they actually heat your food through those radiation. There you have it, heat transfer in a nutshell. There's convection, there's conduction, and there's radiation. You should have filled in your notes, and now you can spend some time coloring it or move on to your next task if you are ready.